What if the secret to changing your life isn't some giant leap, but a quiet, stubborn refusal to give up? This is the story of a tiny seed that was told it was too small to matter. It faced crushing doubt, violent storms, and a relentless drought on its mission to become a mighty tree. And its journey reveals a secret about success that isn't found in grand gestures, but in the dark, silent moments where you just keep going. Once, in a vast and vibrant forest, there was a seed. We'll call him Pip. He was smaller than the others, just a speck of potential in a burlap sack with thousands of others just like him. Around him, the other seeds boasted about their destiny. They talked of becoming towering oaks that would pierce the clouds, or mighty maples that would set the autumn hills on fire with reds and golds. Pip just listened, and a quiet doubt began to sprout. Long before he ever touched the soil, he felt plain, insignificant, a forgotten thought in a grand design. One day, the sack was opened, and a calloused hand scattered the seeds across a freshly tilled clearing. Pip landed in a shallow dip, and soon, a thin blanket of cool, dark earth covered him. This was it, the beginning. But the darkness was total, the silence profound. The proud voices of the other seeds were gone, replaced by a lonely, pressing quiet. Days melted together. Pip waited. He pushed with all his might, but the world above him felt a universe away. He could hear the muffled sounds of life, the scuttling of beetles, a distant rumble of thunder, but his own world was just still, suffocating darkness. He remembered the boastful seeds and wondered if they had already broken through, if their leaves were already drinking in the sun while he was still trapped and forgotten. The doubt he'd felt in the sack was now a creeping fear. Maybe he really was too small. Maybe he just didn't have what it takes. Just as that despair started to take hold, the world changed. The gentle moisture in the soil vanished. The earth around Pip grew hard, tight, and cracked. A drought had seized the land. Day after day, the sun baked the clearing into a merciless prison. Pip felt his life force, that tiny spark of potential inside him, start to fade. Thirst was a constant, agonizing ache. It would be so easy to just give up, to let his spark go out and just crumble back into dust. But then something shifted. It wasn't a grand decision or some heroic moment. It was a simple, primal instinct. A refusal. He would not surrender. With an effort that felt like it could shatter his tiny form, Pip sent a single, thread-like root downward. It was a desperate, blind push into the hard, unforgiving earth. He wasn't looking for an ocean. He was just searching for a single drop of water. The root pushed, millimeter by agonizing millimeter, through packed clay and sharp pebbles. It was exhausting, unseen work. A silent battle waged deep in the earth. He had no idea if it would work, but the act of trying, of just pushing forward, became its own reason for being. Weeks passed. His tiny root, now a small network of desperate threads, finally found a pocket of moisture deep beneath the surface. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The life force inside him steadied. He had survived his first great trial, not through might, but through a stubborn, inch-by-inch persistence. He didn't get long to recover. The sky, once a brilliant blue, turned a bruised purple. The air grew heavy, and a low growl echoed through the forest. A storm was coming. The first few drops of rain were a welcome relief, but that relief was short-lived. The heavens ripped open. Rain fell in violent, driving sheets, turning the clearing into a churning, muddy river. The soil that was once his prison now threatened to wash away completely. He felt the ground giving way, the torrent trying to rip him from his fragile hold. Pip was terrified. He was being tossed and turned in liquid chaos, his tiny roots straining against the flood. This was a force he couldn't fight. It was immense, powerful, and didn't care about his struggle. But the roots he had built during the drought, the ones born from sheer will, held him fast. He bent with the churning water, yielding, but not breaking, clinging to his tiny anchor, The storm raged for what felt like an eternity. And when it finally passed, when the water receded, Pip was still there. Battered, exhausted, but there. After the storm's violence, a deep quiet settled over the forest. The sun returned, not as an enemy this time, but as a warm, inviting presence. Something inside Pip had been forged in those trials. The doubt had been washed away by the flood. The fear had been baked out by the drought. All that was left was a quiet, unshakable resolve. He gathered all his strength, the strength from the deep moisture he'd found, the resilience from the storm he'd endured, and he began to push upward. There was no more hesitation. There was only the mission. He pushed through the softened earth, reaching for a warmth he could feel, a light he could sense. And then it happened. With a final, determined shove, his tiny head broke through the surface. The world that greeted him was overwhelming. The blinding light, the impossible blue of the sky, the fresh, clean smell of rain-washed air. He was no longer a seed in the dark. He was a sprout in the light. This was the breakthrough, the moment of triumph. But as he stood there, a tiny sliver of green in a vast world, he understood that this wasn't the end. It was the end of the beginning. The years that followed proved it. Pip, now a sapling, grew slowly and steadily. He grew through gentle springs and warm summers, his leaves drinking in the sunlight. He endured the harsh, freezing winters, learning to conserve his energy and wait for the light's return. He faced other storms, but now he had the strength to bend and sway, his roots gripping the earth with confidence. He grew, not in grand gestures, but day by day, ring by ring. Small acts of perseverance, repeated over a lifetime, transformed the tiny, doubtful seed into a mighty, magnificent tree. His branches reached for the heavens, giving shade to weary travelers and a home to nesting birds. His roots, born of that first struggle, now held the very earth together. The seed's journey tells us a powerful secret about success that we forget all the time. The moral of the story isn't the magnificent tree at the end. The real secret is buried in the dark, in that unseen struggle. The secret is that growth was happening when it was completely invisible. Success wasn't the moment Pip broke through the soil. That was just the result. True success was that stubborn little root pushing through hard, dry earth when all hope seemed lost. It was the will to hold on when the storm tried to wash him away. We're all conditioned to celebrate the breakthrough, the graduation, the promotion, the finish line. But the real work, the work that changes you, happens long before anyone sees the victory. It happens in the dark, quiet moments of perseverance. It reminds me of a small garden I planted a few years ago. I put the seeds in the soil, watered them, and for weeks, nothing, just flat brown earth. I watered it every day, feeling more and more foolish, convinced the seeds were duds and I was wasting my time. I almost gave up. But then, one morning, I saw a tiny speck of green, and then another. Growth takes time. Roots have to work underground before you ever see results. Those weeks of nothing were actually weeks of beneath the surface, out of sight, a foundation was being built. This is the bridge to your life. Like that seed, you might feel like your daily efforts go unnoticed. You might feel buried in the dark, but those early morning workouts, the late night study sessions, the extra hour you put in at work when no one's watching, the daily choice to face down a fear, that's you, growing roots in the dark. You aren't just waiting, you aren't stagnant. You are building your foundation. Each small act of discipline, each moment you choose to keep going when it feels easier to stop, is you pushing a root through hard soil. Those small daily actions matter more than any single grand gesture ever could. Setbacks are not a sign that you should quit. They are part of the process. The drought and the storm weren't punishments. They were the very things that made the seed strong. Your struggles, your failures, the times you get knocked down, they are drought and storm. They are forcing you to grow deeper roots and build a resilience you wouldn't have otherwise. As the saying goes, we are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Struck down, but not destroyed. Each challenge you overcome adds another ring of strength to your core. That tiny seed became a great tree, not just for itself, but for everything around it. Its perseverance became its generosity. It now offers shade and shelter, a living testament to the fact that overcoming your own struggles can become a source of strength for others. So the next time you feel small, the next time your progress seems impossibly slow, remember the secret of the seed. Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. True strength isn't grown in the easy sunlight. It's forged in the storms you endure and the darkness you overcome. That unseen, stubborn refusal to give up is the most powerful force for change in the world. If this story resonated with you, subscribe for more stories that inspire, and share in the comments one small, unseen act of perseverance you are proud of today. Your story might be the encouragement someone else needs to keep pushing their own roots a little deeper.